Welcome to the Schremp and Syvret Show, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
Welcome back, Bobby. How was your weekend? I heard you on the Merrick Show. Give me a little more insight about how that came about and enlighten everyone on what you guys were talking about.
Yeah, no, it was a great interview. Appreciate Jeff Merrick having me on. Got a chance to go on there and talk about our good friend down in Tampa and talk about our podcast. So it's great to get on there and great to spread the word about the Schremp and Syvret Show. So yeah, it's been a busy week. I got my combine camp coming up next week. I got 27 kids. I got 22 players, 5 goalies, and Elite Prospects is going to be streaming it on their YouTube channel. So super excited about that. It's going to be a great opportunity to kind of set that up for the kids to have a chance to have a kind of a showcase setting. And at the same time, do a 5-day camp where we can do video, go through the games together, learn, grow as a group, grow individually. And then at the same time, they get a good opportunity to, be seen by scouts. So be some good people watching. Got some OHL scouts, NHL scouts, USHL, all you name it. I kind of marketed it for these kids. So it's sort of serving a purpose because I was asked to help some players out, and I thought this would be the best way to do it. So excited for that. Getting ready to leave on Friday. I'll be down there, and our next podcast I'll be doing it from Bled, Slovenia. So beautiful place, beautiful setting, and then get some great hockey in. So yeah, I've been gearing up for that. And how about yourself? What have you been up to? Freshly turned 37.
37, yeah, 1985 birth.
What did you get into for your birthday? Let's hear about it.
We got pretty lucky. I think we booked a flight down to Tampa back in January for a couple of days, and it just so happened that the day that we landed, Tampa was in New York playing, so we got to see Game 5 while we were in Tampa. Obviously, from Corey's couch, we were staying at his place for a couple of days, and then we were very fortunate to still be there to watch Tampa win it in Game 6. It was an exciting game. Their fan base is surprisingly really good. Like you wouldn't think Florida as a fan base, but they're knowledgeable. They're loud. They're obviously backing arguably one of the best teams in the last couple of decades, having gone back to back and then putting themselves in the finals again against Colorado and a chance to go 3 in a row. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Corey had asked me to stay at his house, and him, how superstitious he is. I decided to, on game day, I'm going to take off and go back, go to the hotel, leave, let you do your thing. But it was good. They won obviously Game 5. They stayed over and then flew back. So we got to go out for dinner on the day before the game, and then I stayed over that night, and then left out in the morning to go to the hotel while he went to morning skate. But I saw you got a chance to see
Davey Boy down in Florida, your brother.
My brother came down. I had a pair of skates I had to give to him, so he came down. We went for lunch. We went for lunch the day of the game. We were trying to find him tickets because it was sort of last minute. We couldn't find any, so he just came down and grabbed a pair of skates. We went for lunch and then went home. But a storm came through while we were there crossing the rink, and this thing rained forever. I don't know if it was broadcasted much on TV, but a lot of the players live on Davis Island, which is just a short little drive from the rink,
or a Sea-Doo ride.
Or Sea-Doo, right? Yeah, and they can actually get to the rink by water if they really wanted to, but it's a low point in the area, so it floods really easily. So the roads were there was feet of water in the roads, where some of the like Hedman had to call the police to have someone come with a vehicle that's sturdy enough to get through all this water to pick him up, just to bring him to the rink, because it was like watered in, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, the storm was pretty crazy. It was it almost felt like you were in a bit of a hurricane. Like, it was windy, the downpour. The parking garages were all flooding, like people trying to get to their cars, which we had to get to our car after lunch. So it was halfway up up your calf. Like it was pretty deep. They did the storm had stopped an hour or two before the gates opened, so it wasn't like people were standing out in the rain and then having to come into a colder rink. But
well, that's the thing. They have a big section outside for where they party and between those buildings. So that's kind of like a big part of the atmosphere too, right? It's like kind of that's going on outside as well, and people jam out there. Kind of, I mean, all the teams seem to have that now.
Yeah, but again, Florida has a surprisingly good audience for that too, right? Like that your traditional hockey markets are going to do well there, but they jam that as well, right? There's a pretty good loyal following, and then I actually sat beside Blaine Gabbert, who's a backup quarterback for the Bucks, but was drafted by the Jaguars and jumped around from team to team. But it was cool to sit beside him because obviously another athlete, not his realm being in hockey, but a diehard hockey fan. Like he hangs around with a bunch of the players. He's an 89 birth. So he's right in that sort of wheelhouse for a lot of that age group, and knew the ins and outs of all the players. He asked me some things, that were sort of higher level thinking as far as transition from football to hockey. He was asked a little bit about icing or some of the complexities with delayed offsides, things like that he probably just as a fan watches, but doesn't really have anyone to ask. But it was cool. He was really passionate. You could tell he hangs around with the players quite often because we were sitting in the section with all the wives and the kids, and some of the kids would sort of just crawl over to him and he'd just be holding them like he seemed pretty comfortable with the gathering. But yeah. it was a good atmosphere. The game itself was pretty intense. I liked the way both teams played. Like both goaltenders were unbelievable again. There was a lot of energy in the building. Obviously, I was fortunate enough to see Tampa, or I wanted obviously Tampa to win because of Corey, and then being there was really cool to see them present the trophy. And I thought it was unique because when I think it's Bill Daly came out with the Eastern Conference Championship trophy, usually the captain comes over and takes a picture. And the last couple of years, Stamkos has brought along his assistants to take the picture with him, and Corey is one of their assistants. And I sort of was watching him as this was unfolding a bit, and he was sort of going over, and I couldn't tell what he was saying, obviously, because I was in the stands, but he was sort of alluding to something with a bunch of the players. And then they started to go to the trophy, and Cooper sort of like pushed him, like, what do you like, get over there? And he just like, Corey can't do that. So I asked him afterwards, and I thought it was pretty cool. He's like, you know what? He's like, in the dressing room, you guys have two pictures of them winning the two previous years, and it's the same four guys in the picture. He's like, I don't want to, even though I'm an assistant, you guys do it again. And he's like, hopefully I'll take a picture with the next bigger one. But no, I just thought that was pretty cool. But him and his superstitions, like I left the house obviously because he was like, no, stay. I'm like, no, I don't know what, like how many doors you got to touch on the way to bed or what you got to, I'm just getting out of your hair. But I thought it was funny because it's literally like a monsoon outside, and his son Griffin, they always do like a little handshake just before he goes, right? And then Griffin, his 4-year-old son, will walk him out to the car. He'll hop in the car and leave. And I guess I don't know if Corey would obviously know better, but I guess one of the games, it must have been a home game where he sort of ran down the street after him a bit, like on the sidewalk, like following the car. And Corey had asked him to do it again, but it's like a monsoon outside. Like this is how superstitious he is. He's like trying to get his 4-year-old to like run out in a monsoon, like in like 2 feet deep of water, just because he's done it before and probably had a good game because of it. But it was a good game, good finish. I loved going down there. It was a really cool atmosphere. We stayed at the JW Marriott right across from the rink. It's a fairly newer facility, and I think that's where most of the road teams come in. But after the game, we went to a little spot in Davis Island. I think that's sort of their little dive watering hole. There's about 6 or 7 guys on the island. So the island's unique because they all have, everyone has a golf cart, not just the players, but like other people who are on the island. and they just cart everywhere, like on the street.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
It's really, really different, but it's obviously a higher class area. Like when we were driving in, they're like, "Oh, there's Jeter's place. That's Brady's place." And there, I'm like, "Holy cow!" Like, and it's not the biggest island in the world, but it was really cool to be able to go to their little watering hole, and obviously everyone there were all fans, but the players were there with their wives, and I guess friends and family came as well. But the fan base just sort of allowed the players to just be human. Some places it could probably get overwhelmed, and they're trying to get pictures and all of that, but they just allowed them, congrats guys, like they would bring over like a case of beer and congrats guys, and then let them be. I thought that was really cool. Like I don't think you would get that in Toronto or Edmonton or like hockey crazy city.
If you're Connor McDavid last weekend,
you're gonna like which allows it allows the players crazy. Just to be themselves, right? And it made everyone seem and feel comfortable, because you're not having to look over like, oh, is someone filming me while I drank this Bud Light, or like it was a pretty cool setting. I think it was just a small little spot, but it seemed like the players had a lot of respect from the fan base, and vice versa. I think the fans get a lot of respect from the players and just allowed them to be them, and it was really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's hard to find that combination. Like you said, the fans there are unbelievable. It's like super energetic, pretty knowledgeable. There's a lot of snowbirds that come down there and live and obviously know the game of hockey, but their fan base is unbelievable. Because you go over to the other side of Florida Panthers, like it's not the same, is it? Not even close. This year they had a good season and started to pick up, but like not even comparable to Tampa Bay. The fan base is awesome. And then the part where you're talking about the kind of privacy and being able to live your life, it's amazing for those guys. I think it's a great combination. Yeah, that place is awesome. It's been awesome for a long time. I remember going down there with the Islanders first time down there. That's my first impression. I thought it was just going to be like empty seats and nobody gave a crap, but the building was packed. We weren't a top end team by any means in the island, so it was kind of, you wouldn't expect to see a full building per se, but it was packed. The fans were awesome. It was really cool. But then also there was another, maybe I should save that story, but the teammate and I were a healthy scratch one night, and we weren't going to play the next day. So the night before the game, they had arena football, or no, sorry, it wasn't arena football. It was lingerie football the night before. So we attended that, and just to check it out and see the athletes and check it out. And then the fan support for that sporting event was pretty electric as well. So big sports fans, big sports community down there, and guys that get to play there are very, very, very lucky. Great weather. Like you said, you get to be your own person. You're not like on a showcase, so to speak. Does that make sense? Showcase?
Yeah.
Like
yeah. Like
like a wax museum.
And like for me, when we were driving by like Jeter's place and Brady's place, I'm like, do you guys ever see them? And like, oh yeah, like I see them like walking, and I'm like, that's like, like it's just something you just don't think of, like just walking down the street. Oh, there's Brady and Giselle and their dogs. Yeah. Like it was cool. It's a cool spot. But yeah, all the players they back onto water, and most of them have boats or jet skis or something. So and I think it almost reminded me of like how we were in junior. Like we were always together, and a lot of the guys, they are a lot closer than most other teams, at least the ones that I would have played on, where you sort of just after practice you go back to the rink, and maybe if you have plans you do something with another guy for lunch or dinner or whatever. But it seems like these guys are really close. Like they're over at one other's place, whether it's taking one of the kids over to play with the other another teammate's child, or they go grab lunch or coffee or dinner. It just seems like it's a really close group, and it could speak to their success over the last 2 years and thus far, right? Is that close knit feel of a team that seems to propel you. Obviously they're talented players, but they seem to have something else, a different element that just, they're just always there, right? But it was a really cool experience. I really enjoyed going down. Again, I got pretty lucky with what my timing was. And then this week, my brother, for my birthday was yesterday. And so my brother got tickets to the F1 race in Montreal. So I'm heading there for the weekend to watch the practice qualifying and then the race. So there'll be I'm sure I'll run into a couple other hockey guys down there, but I'm looking forward to that. I've never been to an F1 event. I used to go to NASCAR and NHRA, like drag racing, but I've never been to an F1 event, so it should be pretty cool.
I've never been to a NASCAR. I've heard a lot of stories. Obviously, it's it's an unbelievable party. No, what is it? What's the experience? Teed up
NASCAR? Yeah. NASCAR for sure. Like you're literally sitting there watching cars go around in a circle for a long period of time, right? But I was fortunate. My older brother, the one that lives in Florida, he became buddies with a guy who I think did the PR for NASCAR. So we ended up we used to go to the Daytona 500 all the time as a family when we were younger. And then once I got to a certain point in hockey, probably I was 12 or 13, we sort of stopped vacationing and just spent, more time in my summer training and taking hockey a little more serious. But my brother actually brought us to the Pepsi, I think it was the Pepsi 400 or Coca-Cola 400, obviously one of the two. And it was in Daytona, and his buddy got us like all access everything. So we were like in the driver's meeting where before the game or before the race, they come in and they go over rules and obviously higher level stuff that I didn't really understand. But then we got to do like a drive around too, which was like, I've never seen when you're driving down the straightaway and then you like are coming to the corner in the car, it looks like you're driving into a wall. Like, because the banking is so big that it looks like you're just driving straight into a wall. And then by the time you start going up, it's like pulling you down into your seat. Like it was, and we were going like, I think 200 or 180, which is like ridiculously fast. But like, it didn't seem it when you're out there. But if I would have known, I probably would have been a little more intimidated, but yeah, it was a cool experience. Like obviously, I was old enough to drink at the time. So I think I was with Philly, it might've been in like 2008 or 2009 maybe. But yeah, we had like a bucket of beers that we would just put at the top of the banking and obviously well before the race. And it would, because it's so degreed, it would just slide all the way. Like the bucket of beer would just slide right to the bottom. Like that's how big these bankings are. But yeah, so I've never been to a Formula One. I heard it's a little different because the cars are obviously faster and you're just sort of watching them whiz by, in milliseconds. But I did hear that it's a pretty cool event to be at.
Yeah, I went to one in Edmonton actually. They had it up there in Edmonton, and I remember, I think it's we were at Daryl Cates' house after team event. We all went there for kind of like after training camp. And I remember standing on the kitchen. Gene Simmons was there. Pretty cool experience, obviously. And then there was another gentleman standing next to me, and he started talking about racing a little bit. And I kind of like almost an idiot, like took over the conversation and started talking about like Oswego Speedway in upstate New York and super modifieds and you're going to these races. And then I mean, eventually at one point I'm like, are you into racing? And it was Mario Andretti. And I had no idea who I was talking to. And like, I remember I said that, and like 5 guys looked at me like, you idiot. And I was like, what? I was like, what? Kind of off to talk about Oswego Speedway. That's like, everybody wanted to hear what he had to say. And here comes Bob, just take it over. Talking about the super modifieds, the classics at Oswego Speedway. But no, it was pretty cool. The experience it was great. Actually, the biggest draw, Gene was walking around the stands, and the place went nuts. They were chasing him around. But the cars were really cool. The event was awesome. And to see that, that event, it was neat. It was definitely a step up from Oswego Speedway. A little bit higher class. Well, that was funny.
Yeah, it'll be a cool experience. And then the other thing I was going to say is, did you see our boy Biebs? He's getting a lot of attention with Tim Hortons here. He's got his own like line out now, but did you see his face? Like,
I thought of you instantly. Yeah, you had some of this. I can't remember the name of the symptom. Yeah. You can talk about it more, but what it was. What is this?
Yeah, so it's called Ramsay hunt, and it's actually like shingles that attack behind your ear, like the nervous system, and it pretty much like gives you like paralyzation in one, like half your face. And so that's what Bieber has. Like when he was talking, he couldn't blink because he just has no control over the one side of his face, which obviously made him cancel his tour. But I actually got this in Philly in the playoffs when I think it was 2010-11. We were playing in Buffalo, and we landed. We went. I think we practiced in Philly, and then we flew to Buffalo, landed, had dinner at the hotel, and then I went back to my room, and it felt like, you know, when you get stitches in your lip, or you get freezing in your teeth, or in your mouth, sorry, to get your teeth done, how it sort of has that like slight numbing for a little bit, like tingling, and then it like obviously freezes. I went back to my hotel room, and I'm like, this is weird. My face is like starting to do that tingling. Like I'm feeling tingly all over the place. So I waited a little bit and just sort of messaged our medical trainer and said, do you mind coming up? Like, I don't know what's going on, but it feels like I have freezing in my face. Right. And then by the time he came up, like I couldn't, like he'd asked me to do a couple things, like exercises, and I couldn't like blow, like my lips, I had no control of my one side of my lips. So I couldn't actually like seal my mouth to make like a puffer fish motion. And so then he started to look around and was like, man, this is like shingles. And anyways, it totally, like, you can't close your eye. So like I had to sleep by like face down, but I had to close my one eye and then jam my face into the pillow, or else if I didn't, like I just was constantly like staring, right? Like there's no way of closing my eyes. So that's why, like, when you look at the video of Bieber, he sometimes like rolls his one eye up. It's because your eye is so dry and it doesn't get any moisture, like with the blinking, that if you roll it up, it's sort of like still wet up in the upper eyelid. So that's why he's sort of like getting relief from his eye. But yeah, no, like, and I was like, you know me, I was pretty cool, calm, vanilla type player. Like nothing really fazed me. But obviously, I'm in the playoffs as a fairly young player, you know, trying to make his mark in the NHL or get his foot in the door. And so obviously stress plays a massive part it's the biggest factor of Ramsay Hunt syndrome. That's what it is. It's just stress. But so I guess what I wanted to talk about is like stress in hockey. Like for me, I little did I know, but I would have probably been so stressed out in the playoffs because you're under a microscope, right? Like for me, I'm a defenseman trying to, you know, break into the NHL or stay there full time. And then now all of a sudden you get into the playoffs and you're like, okay, now half the teams are gone. So now you're being watched closer and the games matter a lot more. And you just put all this stress on yourself to perform, because if you make one mistake, it could end up in the back of your net, and that could be the end of your playoff experience on the ice, right? But yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about like the stresses that go on that maybe the fan doesn't really understand. And now that we're heading into the finals, like you're at the pinnacle of hockey right now. There's two teams. One is going to be a Stanley Cup champion and the other's not going to be, right? And there's just so much, like, whether it's, you know, friends and family coming in or orchestrating flights. I know teams have people set aside to do all these things in help booking hotels and flights and tickets and all that. But like, these are all things that as a fan watching, we don't really, you know, maybe your kid's sick, or maybe there's all kinds of things that play a part in their life. And then you add on the element of they have to not make a mistake, essentially, or that's the mentality that you have to have, is like, I make a mistake, it could be in the back of my net, right? So I just wanted to sort of touch on the stresses of hockey. You can elaborate on the stresses that maybe you have had, or your teammates. You've seen some guys that, but it's I guess it's hard to control that. And I don't know. I mean, I seemed as though I was pretty calm and cool and collected, but I somehow got the Ramsay hunt, which still has sort of lasting effects on the nerves in my face. But
Yeah, I mean, it's such a stressful game. So many factors, I think, and I think this is huge, and this is part of the game that I really enjoy seeing the development of it, the mental preparation, the mental health aspect of sport in general. I think it's super important. I think it probably in our era, not to say that we're like 50 or something, but still we're 35, 36, 37, whatever. You just turned 37. I don't want to bring that up too hard.
yeah,
but,
no, as long as you say your birth year, I'm always an 85.
85, yeah.
So I'm always an 85.
I think that time was a little bit more like bury it, just get past it, suck it up. Still that kind of era. It's changing now, where it's more like some of the stuff is there's more resources now to help, to support on an individual basis. And if you have some trouble, some issues coping or dealing or figuring out your shit, there's people there to support it and say, it's not that you're weak. It's more, here's how we can make a game plan and build you back up. I like that. I like that a lot. And I think a lot of people are coming around to it and accepting it. And it's not weakness. It's part of it, because there's so much, you're talking about, playoffs and tickets and flights and stuff like that. There's other variables that we went through ourselves, like trying to make it, trying to go to training camp. Like training camps were so stressful for me because I had no idea where I stood, what I needed to do in some regard, or like what it was going to take. Just couldn't figure it out. And it was it ate me up all day. It's all I could think about. Drove me nuts, being down in the minors, not knowing exactly what it would take to get up there, or wanting to be there and that sort of thing. And the struggle of not being there. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of emotion, and a lot of it gets swept because the other thing is too, the season gets busy and you got to figure out a way to just carry on. So eventually it does come to a boil for some people. For you, I mean, you're a super, very laid back guy, and things seem to bounce off, but there's a lot of add up there. There's a lot of drudge that fills up. So it's not it's terrible that it's awful that it happened, but it's also not a surprise, so to speak, being a friend of yours. And again, for me personally, I'd say my last year in the minor system, I was in such a bad place mentally. I almost didn't want to play hockey anymore. That's the biggest thing in my life, the thing I cared about the most. And it got to such, all the, sort of mental side of it was such a buildup. I literally didn't want to play. The next year I wound up being a full-time NHLer, New York Islander. So point being is that it's good to see that things are changing in some regard, or there's new resources for the players. And, some might call it coddling, but I don't see it that way. I think it's super important. The mental side of it is huge. Your confidence level, the way you're dealing with things, how you deal with things, your game plan and preparation. This is all mental stuff that needs, just like your reps on the power play, your reps on the blue line as a D-man. This stuff all needs reps. And I think it's great the way it's going. So I could have used it personally. I know that. Going back, I had, towards the end of my career, I got to see a guy named Paul Henry, who was awesome. He's super supportive and did a great job in helping build my confidence back up and build me up as a person. These sort of people, go a long way. Call them mentors, whatever, psychologists. There's different names for them, mental toughness coaches. I think they're super important. So anybody listening, I think it's something you should add even early on, even if there's not signs of a player breaking down or meeting that end point where they're lost. I think even in the beginning, you see 12, 13, 14-year-old kids having that already be part of their development to get to where they want to go. Because you go like that, you go 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16 for some, you're jumping into junior, which is kind of jumping into a big tank. And there's so many different factors there. When you get to major junior or USHL or these junior leagues, it's a fast moving sort of pace, and you can get lost in it for sure. So having a game plan and looking after your mental preparation, your mental health, I think is super important, and dealing with that stress. We probably, for me personally, definitely instead of dealing with it, maybe, just go see the guys and hang out with the guys and have a couple pops and forget about it. It'll be fine tomorrow. It's not really how it works. It creeps up. So nipping the stuff in the bud is really important for players. and not letting it build up and taking advantage of, again, the new resources that are starting to kick up. And, you see it all over the place, and social media, and people that are in that space are awesome. And I personally, a company named Same Here, they were a big support for me, helped me with dealing with this stuff too, and talking about it and trying to help other athletes kind of almost admit it. Again, that's the biggest thing is almost admitting it, because it seemed like, again, in our era, it was like almost like you were admitting to be weak, but it's the exact opposite. So sorry for the long story long, but I think it's really important.
And there are players that I've, young players that I've talked to that are looking for advice and help. And yeah, I think it's sometimes we forget that, like, this is just a sport, like there's a lot bigger things in life. And in the moment you think hockey's the only thing that I got, right? But then, like, speaking from experience, having retired and starting a business and having a family, like it's not, but it's hard for me to accept that when I'm, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. So it's like, this is the end of the world if things don't work out for me in hockey. It's really not, right? But for me, the Ramsay Hunt aspect that sort of paralyzed my face, the hardest part for me was that because I couldn't blink, like my eye would just get so watery when I'm out on the ice, right? Because like you're just getting wind whistling through your through your visor, and like I just remember being like, I can't blink, so it's just like pooling of water that it's like now it's just like tearing because I can't even blink to get the tear out. So
why were you playing? Why were you playing?
Because I had to. I'm a young guy trying. Like, you kidding me? I'm in the playoffs. Yeah. I'm an up
but
and down.
I know I understand the answer, but in reality, like, kind of to attach what you just said a minute ago about like being retired and family man and businessman, realizing from that hindsight that it's also like in this like when you're going through something like that, why are you playing? And it's different in the US. I'll be honest with you. In Europe, it's like, I remember in my first year in Sweden, a teammate of mine was out. He'd been out for a day. Then it was 2 days. I get to like the third or fourth day. I was like, hey, what's wrong with Nicholas? Like, oh, he's got an infection, a blood infection. I'm like, what? Jesus. I'm like, is he like hospital? Is he all right? He's like, no, like nose and throat. I'm like, he's got a cold. They're like, yeah. And to me, that was a shock, because for us back, like, you're playing with a freaking eye that doesn't close. And almost expected to. Like in Europe, it's just a little bit more like looking after the human being.
Yeah,
that's really what's important. Like,
yeah, no, you're right. But also when you're in that, like, looking at the finals here, right? Like, you got Kadri with a broken thumb. You got Point, who's been out. I know a bunch of other players are playing with injuries that will come out when the series is over. But these are guys where it's like, this is, sort of maybe once in a lifetime I can win it. I have to play with a, dislocated something or broken something, or, what I mean? Like, I know, and I think that's just sort of our mentality. So like for me, like I didn't realize that the stress was eating at me, like literally, that until I got that. But at the time, like, it didn't really hamper my ability to play. It just sort of exemplified how much stress I had been enduring. Like, the hardest part was trying to not cry on the ice because the wind's just whistling into your wide open eyeball. And then
for a league of their own. Is it for the league of their own? And Tom, are you crying?
Yeah.
Are you crying?
Every time I come back to the bench, I'm tearing, I'm dripping. But yeah, and then the sleeping aspect. But what about, like, so you had said you were close to being, I don't like hockey, I don't want to do this anymore, and then you became an Islander, right? Which you were like their like shootout specialist, right? Like,
yeah. Like
you wouldn't play a minute of OT, and then all of a sudden it gets in a shootout. Like, okay, we got to win the game. Rob, get out there. Like, how stress, like, what I mean? Like,
it was great. It was actually, you're right. It was nuts. I didn't play, like, in the beginning when I started getting those shootout, like, there was the first and second shootouts that I went there, I didn't touch the ice from halfway through the second period. It was a 1-1 tie game. They thought I was a liability. Didn't touch the ice from halfway through the second period to the rest of the game. And then the shootout came, and the coach was like, hey, Schremp, go get warm. When they used to do the ice. So Zamboni's doing the ice, and I'm out there like getting a feel for the ice again. Getting center ice, like I was like, oh my god, like I'm ice cold, man, like ice cold. And this is the toughest thing to do in the shootouts. It's like get an NHL goalie, like beat an NHL, get him. It's you and him 1-on-1 to try to burn him. Man, it was really stressful. It was like I played it cool and calm, but underneath the surface, man, I was panicking. I was like, oh shit, I didn't know what to do. Like I did, yeah. My hands were cold, my feet were like literally cold. Like not the term, like they were cold from sitting there that long. But it was tough to do. And then, and then also there was a little bit like the other thing is like for me, it's in my head, I'm like, man, I can't touch the ice for like 20, talking about 35 plus minutes of hockey. I can't play, but I can go in like the most skilled thing you can kind of do in hockey is like 1-on-1 with a goalie. It just, you know what I mean? That's also like, wait, stop thinking about that. I gotta go. It's like, it's like, it was tough. But then it gave me, for me, then I finally started, I scored on them. So I was like, okay, now I got a spot. It gave me a spot on the team. And we had a lot of ties. We got a lot of shootouts. So it gave me a purpose on the team. But it was tough to do. I mean, the first couple, honestly, the first three, I think it was 2 or 3, it was like I played very minimum minutes and then jumped into that and, executed. It was such a relief to score, to be honest with you. I wasn't coming down there like, I'm the man. I'm coming down like, oh shit, I don't really feel the puck. Okay, there's a hole. Okay, yeah. So, but yeah, it's tough. And getting called to the front like that, spotlight put on, and you don't know what's going to happen. It's because that could go the wrong way, man. Imagine coming down and like totally losing the puck, or to go to take a shot, dump it in the corner. Like there's, so many things that can go wrong there. Not being fresh, not being warm. And yeah, it was tough. But again, then it became a normalcy or normality, and I got used to it and was just kind of like, if the game was tight, I'd be like, okay, just stay focused. Like, probably not going to play. Just don't worry about it. Who cares? Just get ready for the shootout. And that was kind of the motto.
Is this like, were there like questions you had like to your agent, I guess, that would give you an answer as to certain things like that? Like why can I be in the most pressure situation and having to score, but yet I don't play the last X minutes of the game and don't touch OT, which is a highly skilled setting, right? Like, is that something like an agent needs to, like, what does your agent need to get involved, like say something or find out what, or?
I don't know, man. Like at that point in my career, I was just like happy to be there. Just shut up. Just happy to be there. That wasn't going that well. The first 4 years of my career, I played 7 games in the show. So finally, like being there, I was like, okay, this is just how it is. Just, shut up and do it and show up when you have to and when you're asked to. I didn't really have any like pushback. I didn't know what to do. I really didn't know how to react to it. Like, I didn't want to seem like I was bitching. And then next thing, I'm sent down to the minors and kind of scared a little bit, but it didn't really make sense like at all. But there was no answers. And then, I actually went up using a mentor. I've talked about him before, Brad Wheeler. He started watching my game because I needed answers a little bit. Like, what's going on? Like, am I that bad? And he started watching my film and he's like, you're playing good. Like, take your film into the coach and ask. Like, have him explain to you why you're not playing, because you're not playing bad. You're not doing anything. You're not risking. You're not cheating. You're playing right, playing help hockey, not hope hockey, playing really good hockey. I don't know why your ice is getting cut. So I went to him for answers, and then I went in the coach and brought my shifts, and he's like, "Oh, you are playing pretty good." It's kind of like, "Oh, hey, no, thanks. That's great. Can I get a couple more minutes, or at least a couple more minutes right before the shootout? That'd be great." But that's kind of how it went. So, yeah, that was tricky. It was like a fine line to walk. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be a bitch or a complainer, but it's tough to be thrown into that pressure cooker. It's not easy.
Yeah. And you wanted to touch on, like, would Brad Wheeler be considered like an advisor for you, or like, I know all these I know how agencies, or they start out as family advisors. I know I think they're growing more and more, whether there's help with financials or mental or off ice or skills. Like, I think a lot of them have their own, coordination with skills person that travels around and sees their players, but you might know more in depth. with the players you're talking with?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. Family advisors and Wheels would be what I consider a mentor. And I think, the family advisor role has come prominent in the game now, and it's a little bit different than when we were coming up. I had met, when I was younger, I met with every agency. When I was a young kid, I accelerated fast. I was 12 years old. I made a video with Gretzky and when I was 12 and met their agency, IMG, with Mike Barnett, Eddie Mio, those groups. I had dinner with Bobby Orr when I was 13 years old. So, I met that, but that was a little bit different than that back then. Now it's like, there's a whole section of family advisors that it's coming through. Like I got like 15-year-old kids that I work with as mentor, and they're like, should I get a family advisor? Everybody seems to have one, but I think it's more like really important that like, what does that mean? What are you looking to get out of that? Just to slap a tag on, like, oh yeah, I have a family advisor. I just be wary, the families to be wary of that. Like what is that family advisor going to do for your player? And I think that role and that name, family advisor, is I'd like to say more of like a mentor, and how they're going to help the development of the kid instead of, like I said, I worry about the youth players trying to keep up with the Joneses and just getting one to get one. And I think if you're a family advisor, then it's also important, obviously, that what you're offering, what your services are, is something along the lines of a mentorship and helping a player grow, and not just getting a player placed, because that's totally different. Believing in somebody, mentoring them, watching their growth, watching them develop, helping them develop, is much different than picking up a phone, calling a buddy, say, hey, can you take this kid? And then there's a price tag to it. Like that's a much different scenario. And I think it's important that those lines get drawn. If you're a parent, like who you bring in, what's the purpose of hiring that asset, so to speak. And again, that's my view on it. It should be, I don't mind the lane, because the game is, much more serious. There's much more at stake as far as when you get to the NHL and the business side of it, and everybody wants to get there. It's very tough to get there. So to have some answers, have some mentorship for both the player and the parent, I think it is important, because you can be lost. I know my family, like my dad didn't play hockey. He didn't have the answers. My dad just supported me, showed up at the games, and was an amazing dad. And he wasn't the hockey guy. He's just like, okay, Robbie enjoys it. He shows up. He loves it. He's got passion for it. I'll support it, kind of thing. He didn't have answers to these questions. And being a first overall draft pick, it just happened from my play. It wasn't like by maneuvering moves and going to this team and, that team. And at a young age, even at 14, 15 years old, I was flying in for USHL teams to come recruit me. And, the U.S. national team development program, they were bringing me out, trying to get me to come out there. And it was all like, it came down to the end, and my dad was like, what do you want to do, kind of thing. It was never forced. He didn't have the answers, was what I'm trying to get at. So having mentorship for parents to give them good advice, I think, is important. Parents need that, because also the game can be a little bit vicious. Like sometimes people aren't really giving you advice. They're kind of trying to steer you down the wrong way, down a one-way road with what they're telling you. And they want you to take the shine away from their kid. So having somebody that's there to support and believe in the player, and again, watch the development, I think it's helpful. But I want to bring it up as a topic and bring it to the table in the sense of what to look for, what you should expect, and what the advisor should be given in some regard. And there's some great ones out there. I've seen a bunch, and I've met a bunch that are doing a great job. And I've also seen some that are just, they got 100 kids on a list, and they're just sending that list out, and take one of them, and then, they get a premium. So it's a little bit tricky.
So I'll ask you, what would make someone a good advisor? Like if, like I coach kids that are draft eligible in the OHL, and I know that there's always advisors or agents, whatever you want to call them, that are at games trying to, we're so-and-so's parents. We're like hunting the players down a little bit, like, and obviously at some point the parent and player need to they don't need to, but they will make a decision. So what is your advice to the parent or player in that setting where you're getting approached by a bunch of people and you're like, well, I don't even really know anything about this. Like, what's your advice to that parent?
I think it's important not to be a deer in headlights, and I think it's important to keep your focus on what's important, which is the player and your son or your daughter, what's best, and not be awestruck by by interest. You have to still use common sense and listen to the words that the people are saying. I think that happens. I know what's for us, even coming up, like agents are bringing us to dinner, just like, oh my God, it's bizarre to us. My dad was a factory worker. My mom worked 2 jobs. To have this interest was like, it's awestruck. Is that the right word? Awestruck for us. It was, and I think that happens now too. It's like that interest kind of throws people off. I think it's really important, again, to like keep the focus and understand what the words that are coming out of the person's mouth, paying attention to the chemistry, and if the they care about the kid and what their intentions are and what their game plan is really for the player, and do the process of it. It doesn't have to be a quick decision. I think you should definitely, what's the best scenario? I don't know if there is one per se. There's no exact blueprint, but for me, like meeting people and feeding off the energy and seeing what they think about what they believe or what they see for the future and what that map looks like.
So Schremp, let me ask you this: what would make a good agent? Like I'm coaching kids that are draft eligible for the OHL, and there's lots of them in the stands that are trying to find mom and dad to go over and talk to. Some have multiple agents or advisors approaching them. Like what advice are you giving to that parent or player on who do you ultimately go with, if any?
Yeah, I think it's important for the families to listen to what's being said and process the information, process what the person's saying before jumping in and getting overexcited because someone has interest in their player. Again, sometimes people don't have the best of intentions. I think it's important to do a little bit of process and be patient with it, because there's no rush. You don't have to rush into something. And I'm sure you've seen it too through your career, Danny. Like, get guys on your team like, wow, my agent won't answer my call. They've not even, like, I haven't talked to him in so long, and that sort of thing. Like, I think that's a tough part. That's kind of sad to see. A player that needs help and is just getting kind of stonewalled or no answers. I think that's tough to see. I think for young kids, it's with the advisors and with the agents, it's, again, listening to what they have to say, asking them for what their game plan would be for their player and what that looks like, and what the map to, in their mind, to success looks like, and how they're going to get there, and look after the kid, and then holding that accountability. At the end of the day, if you don't like what you see or what's going on, then you can always, go to another service. That's the truth. So that's really important to understand as well. If you guys get together as a parent, you got a 16-year-old kid, again, with the advisor, you got a roadmap, and we're going to put it out and we're going to stick to it. And that the advisor should be, again, mentoring that player through that map and through that journey. And, they're not going to be there. I don't think it's fair to say that just because he's an advisor or the advisor, signs on, that they got to be there 24/7. But you also can't have, stints where you don't talk to them for 7-8 months. If there's tough times and you need answers, you need help with something. I think that's what that person's there for, is to kind of give support, mentorship, and guidance. So
can you get drafted? Can you get drafted with an agent?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't have the answer. Can you?
You can. I'm just asking, like, do you need an agent to be?
Oh, I thought you meant like by rules. I was like,
no, like,
I never thought about that, actually.
But I just feel like there's so many that are like, oh, who, like you said, it's not keeping up with the Joneses, but who they're the so-and-so. It's like, at the end of the day, it's the player that's being scouted, right? Like, if your player is out playing the right way and hard and getting noticed, that he doesn't need Don King in the stands promoting him to every scout. Like, someone's going to watch him and go, oh, this kid can play. I want this kid, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm not trying to say I'm anti-agent by any means, but I just don't think there's an immediate rush to try to, like you said, hook on to someone. It's not first come, first serve. Feel it out. And if there's an organic relationship that you can sort of see that this guy actually cares about my son or daughter and us as people, then I think that's probably a good fit. So like you want someone that's in your corner because they care, and not in your corner because your kid's good and I can maybe make some money off of him in the future. Right. I think that would be my advice. And sometimes it's hard to decipher who does have good intentions and who maybe doesn't. But I think at the end of the day, just as many conversations to seeing how much they care about the player and person as an individual, and the advice that they can sort of give to parents. Cause I know it's a stressful time in their lives, right? Like there's draft rankings and there's all kinds of lies. Oh, this guy's going to go here. And I heard this guy's going to they're going to take this guy in this round. Like there's all kinds of these fibs, but the inside track will probably be someone that is in close conversations with a lot of the GMs, which will be an advisor. So I think that would be the most information you could get, is like, help me like calm down here and just allow me to be a parent and just watch my child again. Right. Because I know it can really work up a family and obviously a player as well. But yeah, I don't know what the proper answer is. I just, for me, I was approached by a couple and we ended up going with a bigger agency. I do hear stories, and I don't know if they're your way or not, or if they even are true, where families are paying advisors, and I would not be inclined to do that. Like at the end of the day, your people are going to watch your son. He doesn't need a marketing firm to be like, you don't need to hire a marketing firm to promote your child, right? Like I just, at the end of the day, like agents make a lot of money when a player turns professionally. And I think as hockey continues, I think it should stay that way, where you put in the time and effort and resources to try to help Rob Schremp get to the next level, where then, whatever the percentage is with the agency, 2%, 3%, 4% of your salary, that's normally how it works. That's when you sort of reap the benefits from it. Not, okay, Rob, tell your parents they owe me this for this quarter. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just hope it doesn't go that way, where it's a pay for service, because it's, at the end of the day, you're there to try to get everyone into the position that they should be or hope to be in. And you still get benefits from them being in those positions ultimately. But I don't know.
The thing over here, the thing in Europe is there's a need for a bridge for information. These kids want to go to NCAA, and what is the path? What is the route? How to get there? Obviously, I think the players and people in North America are much more informed on what that looks like. Over here, it's not so much, right? They're far away from it, and it's not, NCAA hockey doesn't exist really over here in Europe per se, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The kids have to go over there. So there's a lot of like confusion and not understanding of what it, how to be scouted, how to be, admissions and all this different information, the cost and the price and what does that look like? There's a definitely a void of information here, which I think would serve well to educate the people and understand, help them understand. There's people here again that are advising, and that's what they're helping their kids get over to the States, get to some USHL teams or NOL teams, and then eventually, hopefully get into school. It's really, that's the thing, the information, they don't have it over here as much. So I do see that fit for that, people helping get eyeballs to the players. And that's really to jump on this conversation. That's why I'm doing my combine camp next week in Bled, Slovenia. It's to get the chance for these kids to get exposure to the scouts over there. And it's the best way that I can do it. I ran the camp last year I was 14 player. I think it was 15 skaters and 4 goalies. And at the end of it, I had 10 players come to me looking for me to be the advisor. I was like, that's not my role. Like I'm a developer and teacher. Like I'll call my buddies, but I can't promise you anything. And we'll see what I can do. So from last year's camp to this year's, I was like, how can I help these kids the best way possible? And that's what I came up with, was develop a dance floor for them, essentially. A combine camp in Bled, Slovenia. So it's over here in Europe. That's the other thing. For them to go over, they got to go to these showcases, these showcase weekends that are 3, maybe sometimes 4 games. for USHL team or an all team, it's a lot of money for them, to flight over, hotel for 4 days, and all the costs all together comes out to, $3,000-$4,000. It's expensive. It's really expensive. Our family wouldn't have been, not a chance we would have been able to do it. If that was the case for us, we wouldn't have been able to do it, literally. So it's, for me, that's trying to provide that for these players and open some doors for them, but give them an opportunity to showcase. And that's for me, like, I keep getting asked to advise, but the best I can do is that for now is open those opportunities for them to play well, get the right eyeballs, get some good people watching, show up. Like you said, if you're playing well, you can get drafted or picked up by people. You don't need an agent, so to speak. It's your job to show up and play well. So I think that's the other thing too. Some players just think that like people can just automatically, magically open doors for them. I mean, that's not fair either. It doesn't matter who your network is in that regard. If the player is not, showing up, then like that's on the player. Like, you got to show up and dance when it's time to prove yourself and rise to the occasion. You got to have the ability to do that. So I think that's super important for players to understand as well. So it's not all by hiring on an advisor doesn't just wave a magic wand and make everything perfect. So there's still work to be done and, time to put into the game. So I think that's important just as well.
and not being drafted isn't the end of the world. And I'll explain why. Like, there's a player right now who arguably might be one of the best defensive centermen in the game that doesn't get as much recognition as like your Bergeron, Barkov, O'Reilly's. But Anthony Cirelli is 24 years old. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. He's in the finals again, potentially with the potential to win his 3rd. He won a Memorial Cup in the OHL. He appeared in 2 Memorial Cups. In the tournament that they did win, he scored both goals, one being in overtime to win it for Oshawa, and he wasn't drafted into the OHL. I don't know if you knew that or not, but he played with his buddies in Woodbridge up until he got to a point where, I'm going to try playing AAA. So in his minor midget year, so under 16, where he would get drafted, he played on the Mississauga Reps, which weren't a very good Toronto team. And he was like a half a point per game player, didn't get drafted. Then the following year, he played under 18 AAA, was closer to like a point per game player. Again, didn't get drafted. It wasn't until his coach, I think he was going into junior, and his coach, Joel Washcrock, who was an Oshawa scout at the time, he said, you got to get to camp. Like, you're good. So he goes to Oshawa's camp, makes the team, ends up like being top rookie scorer, ends up getting drafted by the Tampa Bay Lightning, and winning a Memorial Cup, I think, in that year. I'm pretty sure they won the Memorial Cup in that year. But this is a player that, I know his offensive numbers aren't that great right now, but like, he makes it hard on opposition. Like, he's matched up against top teams' lines, and he defends so well. He's defensively responsible, positionally. He makes teams grind down low, and the rest of his line is similar, right? He's playing with Killorn and Hagel. Both guys just rag the puck in the defensive zone or in the offensive zone, force the top line of the opposition to play hard minutes, which are in your own end. And when I was at game 6 in Tampa, I watched, right? Because you're getting matchups, right? So he's up against Zibanejad's line, and their first shift of each period, they played in the offensive zone, like a full minute. Like, whether they won the draw or lost the draw, somehow it would get in, whether they go D to D and chip it out and hunt the puck and rag it down low, and they're cycling in the offensive zone. Like, they're not scoring, right? They haven't been offensively productive, but they're forcing top lines to play in their own end, which is not where the opposition wants their top line to be playing, right? And just looking at numbers, like in that series alone, they were only on the ice for 5 quality scoring chances against. Like, you know how you cut up the ice into different zones, right? So you decipher which, the home plate would be a high scoring area chance. In the whole series, they were only on the ice for 5 against and 23 for. So that's your matchup. You're matching up against like Zibanejad, Matthews, Barkov, and they're supposed to be running wild on you. And you're at least in the last series against the Rangers, at even strength, 5-on-5, that line is out chancing Zibanejad. Like, he's played, Cirelli's played 252 minutes at even strength in the playoffs. 60 of those minutes, so a full hour, he's on the ice with Zibanejad, 53 minutes with Matthews, 26 minutes with Barkov. And in all of that time, he's only been on the ice for 6 goals against. Like, that's pretty impressive, right?
That's
like
sick.
for a guy who was not drafted into the OHL, right? Didn't know what he was going to do. Was going to go play junior, and then had someone sort of reach out, get to camp here with us, in Oshawa. And then he makes Oshawa, ends up being like on the top line, scores 2 goals in the Memorial Cup final to win the game, gets drafted by Tampa. And again, he's 24 years old. He already has 2 Stanley Cups. You know what I mean? Like at what point does the conversation turn to be like, you know what? Like, it's easy to probably say, oh, he's on Tampa Bay. That's why. Well, there's a reason why Tampa Bay is good. Like, he is probably a lot larger part than what a lot of people sort of give credit to, right? Like, offensively, that line hasn't been producing that well, but I think it's only a matter of time. Like, when you're in a series and you're playing against the opposition's top line and you're out chancing them like 23-5, right? It's just a matter of time. So I'm interested to see what goes on with this. I'm assuming the McKinnon lineup is going to be against him, right? So both of those lines, like if you go look at stats, expected goals for, expected goals against, both of those lines are like the top in the playoffs for both categories. Like expected goals for, which obviously Cirelli's line hasn't been producing, but their chances are there. And also expected goals against, they're low, as is McKinnon. So it'll be interesting to see how this series turns out with like the game within the game, because I think that Cirelli line is like really sneaky good, right? Like if you're allowing 6 goals at even strength over the entire playoffs against the top lines,
That's
like
sick.
in 3 series,
Yeah.
like you're putting your team at a huge advantage. You're allowing your offensive guys to go out and play, hopefully easier minutes, not against another line trying to possess the puck, but just the amount of offensive zone time that they're controlled entries, whether you call it carrying it over the line or soft chipping it to the corner and being the first on the puck and then starting the cycle, is so much greater than everyone else. It's almost just like a willingness, they're like, you know what, I'm just going to make this really hard on them. So the first period of each game of game 6, their first shift, Zibanejad was like a minute or 45 seconds in his own end. And then they finally get possession. And then it's like, okay, I got to dump it in because I'm gassed. I'm done. Right. So there's 1 minute of, or 1 shift of each period for the top line that they just spent in their own. And on top of it, they were getting great chances out of it. Like, I think there's a time where they jumped in on, like, they found, I think it was Cirelli found the late, I think it might've been Hedman and D-man. And then he goes back door to Hagel. And obviously New York's goalie was a stud as well. It makes a save, but that's supposed to be the mismatch where Zibanejad's line's creating the offense. But in theory, they actually were giving up a lot. But it'll be interesting to see what this Colorado series is like, because I just feel like the Cirelli kid is just like, he's humble. He works hard. He's got good skill. He competes like hell. He's totally okay with being a role player, right? Like I know he gets power play time, but he's like, you know what, my MO is shutting guys down, and I think if he continues that, he'll have a really successful year. He's 24 years old, man.
It's crazy. I think about like every time Zibanejad jumps out, or the other names you mentioned, Matthews, Barkov, when those guys jump over the boards and you're on that team, you're on Zibanejad's team, like you kind of same thing. Like you expect him to go out there and like give that shift of offense and momentum, and it's really stifles momentum and confidence. Really, that's, I can say it from an offensive player. Like that stuff is like, it starts to piss you off. You're like, eventually you get 2 or 3 of those and you're like, you get frustrated. So when you start flustering the skill guys or the productive guys, like that's when those guys like Cirelli win. That's the win, because now they start doing things, risking a little more, gambling a little more, frustration sets in. Sometimes you get the skill guys to take dumb penalties. I mean, that stuff just really, it stifles momentum for the other team. And, again, like you said, they're not expected to score, so to speak. Like Tampa has studs, obviously, and when those guys jump over the boards, they've been producing. I think I saw a stat that over the last 3 years, Kucherov is actually up there. I don't know what number it was. It was like top 10, maybe all time of most points over 3 seasons of playoff hockey, which is crazy. He's got like 89 points. Their guys are producing. And then you got that, what it's like when you got a line like that that's out there buzzing, like that gets the boys pumped. Like you're happy, you want them to score, you're pumping, pulling for them, and like,
and the building, like
excited.
The building can feel that too, right? Like,
yeah,
if you look at like Killorn, Hagel, they're both sort of like hard to play against, like, borderline rat type players, right? Like the fans love those guys, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they get in and they're like cycling or pinning it up on the wall, and like nothing really is being productive as an offensive tactic, but like the crowd starts being like, they see it, they're like, Zibanejad's lines on, and they can't even get the puck out of their own end. Like, it starts to build that at least at home ice, and probably as well on the bench, where the other players are feeding off it, and a lot of it is just hard work, right? There's obviously like skill involved in it, but a good majority of it is just sort of like just raw determination, where it's like, what, I'm going to
like puck placement. And then, like you said, like effort, like play always smart, no risk, put it somewhere and then out dog somebody. Like they just kept doing that on those cycle shifts. It just puck placement, hunt, chance.
Yeah, in these, even in like the start of the game, like even when they're in their D zone, it's on a breakout, it goes D to D and either center or weak side or strong side. And then it's just flipped out to a guy blasting. It's like, they're not trying to, knife through the neutral zone all sexy. It's like, what, we're just going to get the puck in the other end and go get it, and I think it weighs on teams. So it will be I'm going to be watching that really closely to see that matchup. And obviously being on the road early on, it's going to be tough to get that matchup. Bednar's probably going to do a good job of keeping the McKinnon line away from the Cirelli line. But, for an undrafted kid into the OHL, 24 years old, he's got 2 cups. Like he's good. He's really good. Like he's like, and when you think of, Tampa, who's, you think of Kucherov, Vasilevsky, Stamkos, Point, you don't think of Cirelli, but like, these are guys that make you win championships, right?
100%.
Like, it's
100%. They're really the glue. Like you think about, I take it to us, we're not Tampa, but we were the London Knights team of the century. Can't turn that away. But really, Trevor Kells, Drew Larmans, these guys that were unbelievable glue to the puzzle. They were unreal. And some of those, like some of their penalty kills, if I can take it again back to our thing, like remember the building going crazy when we were playing against the Mike Richards. They couldn't even get in the zone. Keller and these guys are buzzing around, finishing hits and not letting the other team get their momentum stuff. Like those guys are actually they are super important to the pie, big ingredient to the pie. Their jersey sales aren't going to go through the roof ever. They might sell a few, but like you said, the stars are always going to be the stars. But and the thing is with Tampa, like their system through Syracuse, Cooper kind of brought these guys up. Like that was a development model where they kind of groomed this team over. This was a grooming over, I don't know, call it 8-9 years. The guys were down into even Tyler Johnson grew up, or I'd say grow up, but developed down in Syracuse. They came up in those first cup years. So they brought this crew together and kind of built a culture, which is important. That's an important piece of it. How they, how the funnel, where the funnel leads or where it starts. I guess, is that the right word, funnel? Because the funnel goes down. Would it be funnel?
Sure. Yeah. Funnel getting smaller.
Where the funnel goes. I think it's important that the development models, it's huge. And those guys probably I can't speak like I know, like I got the insider on it, but like they knew their place, knew what they were being developed and what role they were going to fill into, and then spent those years in the minors to get there. I don't know. I think it's really important, but there's Syracuse. I know because I'm from upstate New York and Syracuse area. Once they came in there, the way that they developed that team and took over, we've seen it all. I was there in the early '90s early '90s when they first came from Vancouver system. We've seen the Syracuse Crunch growing up my whole life. So Tampa really created a culture, and now they're reaping the benefits from it.
The other cool story to it as well is like our buddy Corey Perry, right? Like he's in the Cup finals with 3 different teams, right? Like I think there was a stat that came out that him and Hossa were the only 2 that have ever done that. Hossa won it in his third appearance, right? But to be, just to think about that, like to be in the finals with 3 separate teams, like I know he, from being in Tampa and around the players, like as little as I was, you can really tell like the respect level is like massive for Corey, right? Like the guys just respect everything he does and says. Like it's almost like an acting as a player coach, right? Like his experience and the high pressure situations he's been in, to be able to lean on a player like that. And this is a guy who probably played 4th line all year, right? And then got an opportunity more so in the playoffs, which I think is why they signed him, is for the playoffs. And at one point he was leading the team in goals, right? And he's not bitching about ice time, or he's like, you know what, I this is my role. Like I'm getting older, and I can help younger guys in different situations and maybe be a calming influence on the team, which I think they're a decently calm team to begin with, but then rise to the occasion. Like him and Pat Maroon have, I think, 8 goals between them. And it's not like they're playing a boatload of minutes, right? It's just these guys seem to elevate their game in key situations. And I think that was a really good pickup for Tampa. Like I think he was a big part of their second series win was Corey's production, right? When they lost point. But no, it was, I'm happy for him. Hopefully things turn out well for him. Maybe we'll fly in from Latvia and get to the Cup party if there is one. But, if I'm invited, I don't know. I still got to wait for Patty's invite if they do win it. But
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no, I think it's been amazing to see that pairs over the last 3 years. And the thing is too is like that stuff doesn't always turn out. Like a team's like, oh, we'll grab that guy and hopefully he helps us in the stretch. And then over the last 3 years, he's been there in the stretch and been a big factor for these teams. So like it's crazy. I think his understanding of the game is second to none. His competitiveness is second to none, and the way he understands how to score goals is second to none. I love the way that this guy attacks the net. I mean, ever since junior, he used to do a lot different in junior. Like he used to toe drag everybody and worm his way around guys. I remember poor Boris Vlabek. He's on a bunch of posters after Pears got done with him, but now it's really Pears is leaning on his knowledge of the net and knowledge of goal scoring to be effective and score goals. The game's changed a lot, but when it comes around that sphere around the net, he's smarter than anybody in the game at doing it. And the one thing I got a clip today I wanted to show and how Pears uses his reach and how he understands the position of the goalie and the faces of the net. And being a big guy, he's 6'3", got a big lengthy reach. He uses it to the max, and he understands it very well and uses that deception to score goals. And what I see a lot of is that for him, the goalies get set to his body, but his arms and his reach are so far out, like so much off his body, that's hard for goalies to pick up on, hard to read. And his release, like if you see him shoot in the summertime, and you skate with him, and I play with him and skate with him in the summertime, like his shot is not overwhelming. You get with some guys in the summertime and they start stepping on the puck and you're like, holy shit, like that guy can piss on the puck. His shot is not like that at all. It's just really deceptive and very accurate. And the thing is that he understands very properly and to a T almost is his reach and his range. And what I truly believe is that Pears sees the puck. He sees the net through the puck's eyes. I speak about it all the time. He sees it differently. He understands where the puck is, how long his reach is, and what that, effect is on the goaltender. And I think that's something that really that players can learn from a lot in understanding how to score goals. You don't need a missile. You don't have to have a rocket. You just have to understand how to manipulate goaltenders. And if you're a bigger guy, you're using your reach and your range and what that means and how to read a goaltender. I think Corey does that very well, understands the goalie's positioning very well. He understands what one step to the right does to the goalie, again, using his reach and his range. That's something really important. He scored, I don't know, what's his totals? He's up in the 400s in his career in goals. So it's a lot of goals. He clearly knows how to do it well. So if you're a young player, I think this is a great player to study, not only because we're buds and we won a championship, but also like he's an elite goal scorer and he does it in many different ways. Net front, he's always there. You see him during these series. He's constantly passed around the crease. I talked about that on Merrick's show and why he's so effective, and wrapping pucks around, attacking the net at the right times. And, from the clip you'll see today is using his range, using his reach. And again, you see the shot, it's not a missile. It's just about using the range and catching the goalie off guard. So
the other thing Corey's really good at is pissing off teammates, right? We made a post the other day about the shit that he does to opposition. Like there's a clip where he's just holding on to Hosa's stick for like an absurdly long period of time until Hosa sort of just turns around and looks at him, is like, lets go of his own stick. He's like, sure, man, you can have it. And then when Hosa goes to grab it again, Corey just like lets it go onto the ice. And then like I think the one it's Alexander Semin, I think on Carolina, who's sitting on the bench, and Corey skates by and just scoops his stick on the fly. Or one that I thought was really interesting was a TV timeout. A lot of guys like their gloves really dry, so they'll have multiple pairs of gloves, right? So the trainers will run back and grab their set that's on the dryer and then bring it out and give it to them, put it on the bench or whatever, and then take their wet set back to dry them. And there's a clip with Jeff Carter where Corey sees it happening and then just like squirts water into his newly dry gloves. But like this is all shit that he's doing not because the cameras are on him. He's just like, this is just what he does to get under people's skin, right? And he's so good at it, right? But this will be a great series. Like our friends at PointsBet Canada should be fielding quite a bit of money this series. But for me, I think with a layover that Colorado's having, sometimes it's good to have that rest, but sometimes it's not. Like I think we saw that early in the New York Tampa series. Tampa had obviously swept Florida and had a nice break where the Rangers came off of a Game 7 victory and sort of just kept going, and they sort of gave it to Tampa the first couple games, first couple periods anyways, for sure. Probably 5 periods worth of hockey was all New York, and they end up leaving New York with a 2-0 series lead. But I think Tampa going into Colorado, I think Colorado will be, I think the series is going to be really close. And I just feel that Game 1, I'm going to give Tampa the edge, and I'm going to take them -1.5. So they're going to win by 2 goals. But again, it's going to be a really close series. Obviously, I'm betting a little bit with my heart here and hoping that Tampa wins, but I truly think that it will be a little difficult coming off of that long of a layoff to jump into the heart of things again.
Yeah, I think Camper's coming back as well. So he's had a little break, been out for a bit. So I think that's the difference maker. Vasilevsky, the kind of very well matched team, firepower on the forwards, and then you got your back end. I mean, Makar is special. There's no one really like that. I mean, Hedman can produce and does produce, but Makar is a different animal. But the goaltending, I think, Tampa's got the edge, and that's huge in the playoffs. So I think in Game 1, especially him coming off that break, they're already trying to downplay it. I saw it in the article, like, we're going to have some patience with him, coming off a little bit of a layoff. He might be rusty for a period or two. So you're rusty for a period or two on Tampa, like, good luck. Or we could see fireworks. We could see a Calgary Edmonton sort of series, like a 9-6 in the first game.
I think either way, I think it's going to be a good series. I think, like I said, I think the layoffs do help. I know a lot of teams play with injuries, and both teams have injuries still. Colorado's trying to overcome a few of them, but I feel like Game 1, Tampa will come out with a little bit more experience and having a shorter layoff just be more in-game pace, I guess. I do think that the series is going to be extremely close and will be great hockey. I think there's a lot of offense. There's a lot of speed, skill. There's a lot of games within the game. And again, Shrumpy, was good hooking up with you again for the week. I'm going to head off to Montreal, catch some Formula One. Follow us on YouTube, Schremp and Syvret Show, Twitter, Instagram, at Rob Schremp or at Danny Syvret or at the Schremp and Syvret Show. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Schremp and Syvret Show. Don't forget to subscribe to the Nation Network YouTube channel to watch all of our video breakdowns.